Today's episode is a profound exploration of how life's unexpected twists and turns can lead us to discover our authentic selves and build the businesses we've always dreamt of. But first, let me ask you this. Have you ever found yourself at a crossroads facing a breakdown that you felt like the end of the world? Have you ever considered that from the shattered pieces of your old life, a new and vibrant version of you could emerge? In this conversation, we are privileged to sit down with an extraordinary guest who knows firsthand the power of transformation through adversity. Meet Sadie, a self-connection coach and shadow worker who is on a mission to guide creative business owners towards a path of sustainable success and fulfillment. She understands that sometimes the most significant breakthroughs arise from the ashes of our breakdowns. What makes Sadie's story truly captivating is her ability to blend her lifelong fascination with magic and spirituality with pragmatic approach. With over 2 decades of experience in strategic project management and process improvement, she weaves intuitive insights with grounded practicality, paving the way for her clients to embrace their visions while taking aligned and purposeful action. The heart of today's conversation, from breakdown to breakthrough, Sadie will courageously share how her own life falling apart became the catalyst for her incredible journey towards self-discovery and building the business of her dreams. Get ready for a transformative episode that will leave you inspired and empowered to see breakdowns not as the end, but as opportunities for remarkable new beginnings. Without further ado, let's dive into this insightful and transformative conversation with the remarkable Sadie. You are listening to That Big CEO Energy, where we talk all things business, life, marriage, and push you to a new edge of discovering what that big CEO energy means for you. Listen, I understand that we have barriers that we carry from when we were once employees, and those have impacted us as we continue to build our businesses. I'm here to walk alongside you and give you encouragement through interviews with friends and other women in business who have broken down those barriers and paved their own way. Tune in with me as we uncover some of the unconscious things that we do that keep us from building that big CEO energy we've always dreamed about. Let's dive in. I have learned about Sadie just recently. We connected in a group called Need a Guest on Facebook. And so I thank her for taking me up on my offer of wanting to connect. And so thank you, Sadie, so much for being here. And our overall kind of theme for this conversation is just going to be kind of how your life sort of falling apart, right, created this space where you needed to find your true self and build the business of your dreams. And so with that, I guess I could probably assume that you haven't always had sort of this spiritual side so forward in your life, right? Tell us a little bit about how you found this side of you and a little bit about where you come from.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. And having these kind of conversations always feels important, even though it can feel like it dives deeper into what feels like normal kind of just casual, comfortable conversation. So those kind of edges that feel slightly uncomfortable or confronting, that's kind of where I like hanging out. So funny enough, my story, yeah. So my story starts with fundamentally a breakdown, kind of about 2017, I think it was. I just was feeling so unhappy in the day job that I had, but I couldn't put my finger on what it was. There was just like on the surface, all the tick box things were there, good job, comfortable kind of level of income, happy relationship, holidays, all those kind of surface things. But there was just something that was making me feel deeply dissatisfied and kind of itchy on the inside, that I just wanted something more or something different, but I couldn't tell what it was. So I just kept throwing myself into work, throwing myself into being useful. throwing myself into making sure that everyone else was around me that was happy and that they were getting from me what they expected from me without doing that fulfillment for myself. So yeah, that kind of deep plunge into completely breaking apart came from just that persistent burnout, chronic overwhelm, doing all the things for everyone else and never standing still long enough to think about what it was that I wanted for me, meant that I was, blew apart into lots of different pieces and then had no choice really but to pick through those parts and say, which of these parts are me, are truly, really me, and what are parts that other people have put on me and that I've been carrying because that's an external thing. And I spent months just sorting through all these parts of me and all these different roles that I had, the different responsibilities that I had, and deciding, is that something that I want to keep hold of, or am I ready to let it go? And that meant turning inward for answers rather than looking for external guidance and external answers. Yeah. So that kind of, I guess it's a slightly cliched spiritual awakening that happens, but that's the kind of thunder lightning, I think, that happens to many of us that have that position of playing a part for so long. And then finally our nervous system, whatever it is, says enough. And we kind of break out of that. So yeah, that's the nutshell of how I came to be in this space now.
When you were walking through sort of that time of unpacking what was happening and really funneling through all of that, did you ever have a moment where you reflected on that and said, this was sort of the time that I should have been aware that things started to turn in a direction that I didn't want? Or was there a time where you kind of looked back and thought to yourself, man, I just really wish I would have known, right? X, Y, and Z, whatever that was during that time before all of this got to this breaking point?
Yeah, I think if I'd have understood that so much of the idea that we hold about ourselves comes from external sources. So how we're raised, the culture that we're in, the society that we are part of, the things we consume in social media and everything else. If I understood how much of that takes a part in forming your idea of who you are and kind of buries away the truth of things, then I hope maybe would have been able to identify sooner that the part of me that was wanting something different and kept being suppressed was actually the real part of me. And what was sitting on top was someone else's idea of what I wanted or what they wanted me to be. So I think that's the one thing, if I could go back and tell like my 20-year-old self, like, trust more of the voice that you hear on the inside, the one that's kind and considerate and grounded, that voice. Trust that voice over all the other ones that you hear telling you you're not good enough, or that the way to be successful is pleasing other people and making sure that they're happy, because that's then kind of you gain favor and that kind of thing. So I think that's the thing that I wish I knew when I was younger, that to have more of a solid idea of me, the true me, and not that external view. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's true when it's not just age, right? That happens. I think it's a tendency of us being women that's naturally ingrained in a lot of our families, is that, and it was true, right? In the 50s and the 60s, where the mom of the house took care of everything. She was sort of like the driver. She took care of all the people, made sure that they got to where they needed to be, took care of the husband and all of this stuff and things, and was often pushed to the side. And then there was no room for a breaking point, right? Like you didn't get to have that part of you. And I think now it's really lovely in our society, and the way that women are starting to show up is they're raising their hand and saying, I have value and I want something more for myself. And unless they get kind of to the point that you're talking about, where they are having sort of this breakdown moment, I fear that oftentimes women will never see themselves of needing more or wanting more, right? And that's a little bit sad on one hand, but on the other hand, for the women like you and I, where it's we know that there's a calling. We know that there is something more that is being asked of us, and it's not from the external sources, right? It's completely derived from the inside of us.
Mm-hmm.
It really causes us to kind of reflect and go, that's interesting that the bulk of my 20s, which is usually when this happens, is when we let society kind of dictate how we're showing up as women. And I'm going to assume you're in your 30s now, right?
40s.
40s, right.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
thank you though.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm almost 40. So I'm right there with you. But usually by the time we get to our mid 30s, 40s, we identify kind of that period of like, man, I missed out on so much of my 20s because it was harnessed on what my friends were doing, what society was asking of me. And it makes a difference too, right? If your family background naturally have women that are givers and do all of those things, like you say. So, and thank you for sharing that. When you sort of identified this spiritual awakening, was it scary for you, or was it a warm welcome because you had the breakdown?
It was scary, because that breakdown was very much a stripping away of any idea of all my self-trust went completely out the window. I couldn't make any decisions without kind of needing my husband, like even what to have for dinner, or should I put this seasoning in the food or not? Like everything was gone and it was stripped back. So it felt really raw and really vulnerable as well. And it was actually coming back to practices that I had enjoyed as a child, and coming back to the idea of ritual and doing things in a really ritualistic, comforting way. That's what became the warm welcome bit into that spiritual space. So there was all this kind of emotional turmoil and all this kind of volcano of things that were coming up and surfacing. And I created this routine for myself where I was, at the beginning, it was simply mindfulness and journaling and going out for walks in my local park, and just kind of making sure that through my day, I was bringing in practices like that, was giving me the space to explore some of those slightly pointy, jangly edges of things in a space, in both a physical space and a spiritual and mental, emotional space that gave them a little bit of distance. So I think, and that's why I had to have that time off work. I could not have been able to work through those feelings and those things that were coming up and still gone to my job. So I was fortunate that that was part of what I could do, I was signed off for 3 months, and I had that time just to heal, literally, to kind of physically, mentally, emotionally heal. But there was this kind of, I guess, a washing machine effect of really feeling rinsed out and going through some quite heavy, dark and uncomfortable things, but then soothing that by making sure that I was looking after myself, that I was identifying what my needs were, that I was meeting them, and I was building this kind of self-connection then that had been switched off for so long. And then the more that I did that, the stronger it got, and the more I realized who I really was and what I really wanted. And then all that rubble that had come out, I was able to kind of navigate it in a way that felt more comfortable. And I kind of built up my resilience to doing it. So, and it's not linear stuff either. Like I've been there again in that same space, but being through it once before, I know I can go through this. This is kind of, I refer to it as kind of like a caterpillar soup phase, like that bit before a caterpillar becomes a butterfly, it has to become the mush. So it's kind of being in that phase, being in that thing when nothing feels like it makes any sense. It's a case of, okay, I can trust myself to move through this, let it be wherever it needs to be, just be mush for a while. This is the messy middle, and what comes after is going to be so much better. So yeah, first time round it's not fun at all. But the repeats of it, they get shorter. The periods of that kind of turmoil feeling, they get shorter, and you kind of build the resilience to navigate them.
So you go through your 3-month period, and then Do you go back to your job, or is this the revival of where you are now?
So in that time off, I retrained to be a coach. That was one of the things that I did with the time.
Beautiful.
I was like, I can use this time now to focus on doing that. A complete side story is my husband needed a kidney, and I was not a direct match for him, but I was a match as part of the sharing scheme we have in the UK. So I kind of put a donor in, I put a kidney into the mix, and he got one back from someone else.
Very
So
nice.
this was happening at the same time, which funny enough, didn't feel like the stressful thing. It was much more this kind of spiritual awakening thing, like this sense of who I was. So that was kind of all the testing and things were happening for that at the same time.
Wow.
So I decided, yes, I was going back to work, but I wasn't going back full time. I was and again, I was fortunate enough to do with my financial position and talking it through with my husband, to have a day that was going to be for what I wanted to do. And that became the day that I worked on my business. And in doing that, I was also able to create a bit of space between my identity as Sadie and my identity as the role that I had in my day job. They no longer became so enmeshed that I was solely reliant on how I was performing in that space to dictate my value. I was kind of, this is a day job. I come along, I do my best, and then I step away and I have my own things that I do, and I have my boundaries. And that really helped kind of create a container that meant going back into that space wasn't as overwhelming as it had been before. And then using that day that I had for myself, I was then able to build what the future would look like and kind of create my escape plan as such from the day job.
Oh, I love it. I love it. During this time, is this also your period where you found out that you were on DHD?
No. So this is only very recent.
Okay.
So this is literally only just this year, kind of where are we? Like 4 or 5 months ago.
Okay.
Looking back now,
very new.
Yeah. So looking back now, I think it's all part of the same story, because there's an ongoing unfolding of working out who I am. And I don't think we ever get to really discover that, like that pure essence.
We're not a destination.
No, exactly. Yeah, the ADHD thing, which is a lovely, fun combination of autistic and ADHD.
Yeah.
Discovering that was like a big, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Of so many things. And on reflection, it's made sense of friendships that I had at that time that kind of were blowing up in a certain way, the way I felt about work, because there was all this masking that I was doing and this hiding of my identity. And my nervous system was just craving to step into more of a space that felt real for me and less overwhelming. So yeah, that's been a recent discovery.
Interesting. I love that there's always this hindsight component for you, that you constantly are, oh, and this contributed to that. That's interesting. And I do talk a lot about that, where we can and we should, especially when we're dealing with fear, let that be a part, right? And also look it square in the face and go, what is that? Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Where is that showing up? And almost finding ourselves being a little bit of a puzzle where we need to put together the pieces in order to understand like what the full picture is, right?
Yeah.
And I love just how beautifully you've kind of gave yourself that time to be able to do that. And I love that you were able to just kind of understand where you are, what do you need? And now you have your business, right? And so tell me a little bit about kind of what you do in your business as far as the holistic approach of helping people understand how they can do that too.
Yeah, sure. So when I first started coaching, I kind of threw out the window all the skills and experience and knowledge that I had from my day job. I was like, I draw a line under that. That's all written off. That's the past. And then tried to purely be in this kind of holistic spiritual space of being guided by intuition. And what I found is that actually there is a balance of combining the knowledge that I have, the experience that I have from a project management perspective, that organizational side, the finding the path through from a vision to practical things that need doing, to the tasks that they're involved and who needs to do them and when and that kind of thing. And so I kind of went back to bringing those things in and finding a way to combine them to support people connect intuitively with what it is that they want and who they are. So to understand what they want their life to look like, whatever it is that they want more of in life, whether it's a financial thing, or whether it's more time, more rest, more joy, whatever it is, that's kind of feels missing. And then create a practical plan to go along with it to make that thing happen. Mm. And I find, especially working with creative and holistic business owners, they're really great at having the vision. They know they have that thinking ability and that imagination and the creativity, but the grounded practicality of doing things about it is sometimes a bit that's missing. So that's how I like to help and kind of say, brilliant, you've got that vision, you know what you want to happen. What action is now going to get you there? And then the third component of that is then dealing with the demons that pop up along the way. So the fear, the people pleasing, the perfectionism, those things that start to pop up, those feelings of being unworthy, that then get in the way of that action and managing them as they come up as well. So that's where the shadow work comes in, to kind of complete that circle of self-connection in the first place, to understand who you are and what you want, those practical intentions of actually being in action towards what you want, and then the demon hunting, the kind of, or the demon befriending, actually, because that's a much truer sense of it, befriending those parts of it so they stop getting in the way and kind of being an anchor that pulls us back so we can move past fear and into that space of expanding our comfort zone and doing more so we can have more.
Yeah. What would you say is something that women especially can have as a starting point to either uncover, right, what it is that they're wrestling with, mm-hmm. or how they can kind of take that next step to have a little bit of a breakthrough?
I think taking the time to actually be with yourself and not doing things, not being... So if you were to strip away all your responsibilities for other people, who are you? If you're not a mother, if you're not a boss, if you're not an employee, if you're not a business provider, a service provider, if you just strip all those things away, who are you as an individual? And how much time do you spend with that individual, connecting with them, really asking as if you're kind of having a conversation with yourself, like, what is it you need? What is it that you want? What is it that you're afraid of? And having those conversations, whether it's by journaling or just within your mind, just kind of taking the time and the space to connect with yourself in that way and understand what it is you want and what's important to you. And then having a look, kind of looking back up then at the life that you have and seeing, are you making enough space for those things? Are you prioritizing those things? And then if it feels difficult to do that for whatever reason, because it's not often a natural thing for us to do,
right?
Just to kind of have a conversation with ourselves, or even to think that we're worthy of having a half hour of time just to connect with ourselves, is that becomes the work then. If you don't think you have the time for half an hour just to connect with yourself a week or a month, then that's what you need to work on, understanding where are you so busy that you cannot have that time for yourself? What is getting in the way? And it's like a gentle removing of barriers, but doing it all with compassion and not judging yourself for what you find, not judging yourself for always putting everyone else first, because that's how many of us have been conditioned, or not judging that we never get to the bottom of our to-do list because we get distracted and start doing something else, because that's a way that the procrastination keeps us safe by not having to focus on something and get it done.
Mm-hmm.
So being really compassionate and curious about what it is that we want and who we are, and noticing what feelings and what thoughts come up when you do that. So very, very simple practices really that can start to build that insight for you.
Something that you said was really powerful for me, and it's that piece of not judging yourself.
Yeah, so important.
Yeah. Not criticizing yourself because of the things that you didn't do or I should have been, right? It's really easy to get caught up in that sort of lamage of things that just tend to stir us. And I think that then creates another layer of fear where it's now I can't act on that because what if, right? And then those questions start to come up. When we start to feel that, right? When we start to feel that guilt, what is your little trick that you have to kind of snap us out of that?
Self-parenting is a big thing. Just treating myself if I was a really upset 5-year-old.
True.
Like, what is it that you need? It's okay. Telling myself I'm okay. Being really soothing, not trying to get myself to snap out of it. Not telling myself, stop crying, you're okay, like in that way, but just kind of, you're sad, that's fine. Let yourself be sad for a while and I'll sit here with you whilst you're sad. It's that kind of energy. Or you're angry. Okay, that's fine too. You can be angry. Tell me what you're angry about. Why are you angry? What do you need? And just meeting yourself with all the kindness and compassion and grace to allow whatever it is that you're feeling to be there without trying to rush through it, without judging it, without trying to justify it or minimize it, just accepting these are my feelings. I've got them for a reason. And the tighter I try and hold on to them or push them away or bury them, then they pop up somewhere else when I'm feeling not so resilient. So the best thing to do with big feelings is to like ride the wave of them and allow them to kind of to pass through. And that goes for fear. And if we're comparing ourselves as well to other people, just to allow that to happen rather than going, oh no, we mustn't compare because we're supposed to be all equal and cheering each other on and we're women supporting women and all that kind of thing. It's like sometimes comparison is there because it lets us know what we want and it lets us know what's important to us by indicating where we're measuring ourselves against other people. And that's information that we can use. So again, that's something else to be curious about. Why am I comparing myself to this person? What am I seeing in them that I don't have for myself? Or what am I seeing in them that I'm judging perhaps as well? And then being curious about that rather than punishing ourselves for our feelings. I think that's it's not easy. It's a big learning curve, but to stop punishing ourselves for all the feelings that we have is a huge step in that understanding.
I know the big question is probably going to be from a lot of people as I do all of this work and life is grand. I feel really, really good about where I am, but I'm still having a really hard time in my business. And I still have these little moments in my business where I feel like I'm not successful. I feel like no matter what I do, right, I've done all of this internal work and I just can't feel successful in my business. What would you say to them?
I give them a big hug, first of all, because I know, I know that feeling. And I know it can be so hard that when you built something for yourself because it's so dear and important to you and you want other people to be engaged with it and you want other people to be inspired and excited by it as well, but things don't always feel like they're going the best, is sometimes that's when you need to take a little step back. Not a huge step back and just close the doors and say, right, that's it, I'm giving up. But just where can you create a bit of distance between what it is that you're doing and the person that you are so that you can be less focused on the result of what you're doing and more focused on the act of what it is that you're doing and how that feels. Because sometimes I think as well, we get onto a path that we think is the right one and we don't take the time to look up and look around and see, is this still the right path for me? Am I still going in the right direction? And we then fall back into those same kind of hustle culture ways of that doing more is what's the most important thing rather than just creating a bit of space for ourselves. So we do more things and we show up in more spaces and we create more content and we create more services and products thinking that's going to fill the gap. And it just makes things feel more confusing. So I think if you're feeling that within your business that you're doing all that work and things still aren't quite going the way that you want them to, is to trust that you can take a step back from things, take a holistic view in relation to kind of looking at the whole thing and ask those questions of, is this still what I want? What can I do less of? Rather than what do I need to do more of, more sales, more marketing, more whatever it might be. What can I do less of? How can I be more discerning about the work that I do so I can make sure that I'm providing that quality and not just trying to run myself ragged, running a business that is making me miserable. And creating that space, I think, allows creativity to come up as well, because you can't be creative if you're in survival mode. It's not possible. You need to feel safe and grounded and comfortable that you can spend the time to be creative. And that's when you're going to get new ideas about what you could be doing differently, or collaborations you might be able to do, or a new direction to take things in. So trust that you can take a step back, even if it feels counterintuitive, and then look at things with a different perspective.
It's interesting that a lot of the conversations that I have, including the one that I'm having with you, is doing the opposite of what society says that we should be doing. Yeah. And that's where the real growth comes, right? That's where the real success and the feeling of success comes. I think we all have our little definition of what success is for us individually, but I think overall, it's always been pushed that success is this number that's attached, or how much you drive forward, or how much you are doing out in the world, and making sure that people see you and you're the top elite. That is society's mark for success. Yeah. And I love that you're stripping this away and pulling it away and putting it on the other end of the spectrum, where success sometimes is not doing all of those things, not showing up in that way, not putting a dollar number value on your business and what it makes at the end of the year, right? And I think with that, it's creating this nurture effect that we need to be able to have, so that if you are a service provider, or if you are a coach, maybe that is struggling with how to show up in spaces with your clients, that's the work that we need to be doing on ourselves before we get to our clients, right? So that we can show up with compassion and know what they're walking through. Yeah. And I love that you've taken sort of this time to give yourself so that you can show up in spaces with your clients and know that they're being held. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And can still do the work, What is some of the work that people can expect if they want to show up in a space with you?
So my main program is one that is called Success, and it's a group. Yes, exactly. And it's a group program that combines a cyclical approach to looking at, as I was saying earlier, that idea of who you are, what you want, what things are getting in the way, and understanding those things about yourself, and then providing the tools, the practical tools to create a plan that connects to your vision, that puts you in action. And then the shadow work resources that are there as well to pick up on as and when you need them, because if fear is coming up, or comparison is coming up, or people pleasing is getting in the way, and poor boundaries. So it's kind of troubleshooting then, okay, what's the thing that's getting in the way of this awesome plan that you've made? And then being in action towards it. And then that full cycle comes round again of then taking the time to pause and reflect, look back and look forward, so you can celebrate what you've accomplished. You can realize how far you've come, and you can take that information into considering what happens next. Mm-hmm. So it combines all the bits that I love doing. So that self-connection work, the shadow work, the being practical and doing things, and then having these connection circles where we get to release things that aren't working for us anymore. We can move on past them. We can move past plans that we've fallen out of love with. That's okay. If that was your plan last month and now things have changed, that's fine. You haven't got to stick to it. You can make a new plan. You're the boss. So it's a very holistic blend, I guess, of practical tools and that spiritual space as well, and trusting that you can create your own magic from those things.
Yeah, I love that. And for anyone that is listening, go to her Instagram, because it is, and I would say open it on the browser, because it is the most beautiful thing that you
have landing
put together. Yes, it is gorgeous. But it truly, honestly, it made me feel not judgmental of myself. And like I was showing up in a space with you to just be a person, right?
Yes,
be
100%. Yeah.
Be a whole being. So I love that. Thank you for creating a space. And I know that this is a difficult space for a lot of people to be in. And I'm not saying that, it's something that you just wake up one day and you're like, oh yeah, I think I'm going to work on this. It is that breakdown moment often that we show up in. And so I think my personal encouragement, and I'm sure it would be yours, is that if you are a woman that is struggling with that and you are feeling that pull of, I'm made for more, I'm designed for more, but I don't know what that looks like, reach into that, tap into that, ask questions to yourself. And there is no shortage of me mentioning on my channel journaling.
Yeah.
And every episode, I'm pretty sure my audience has gotten pretty disgusted with me on mentioning journaling. Yeah. But it is something so powerful. And I'll be honest, I don't do it every day. I do it when it feels really, really hard. But I do it also because those are the things that you start asking yourself. You can start with just a prompt of, how am I feeling today? Right. And it spirals into all of these different things. So I'm so thankful that you brought that up, because now I know, and my audience will know, that I am not crazy when I suggest. It is a powerful tool. Yes. Everyone in the world should be using it, right, wrong, or indifferent.
They should teach it at school, definitely.
Oh my gosh.
Just imagine if you had half an hour a week of journaling time in school, just amazing, I think.
Or even before class, like if a teacher just prompted someone to just get out of the journal and tell yourself how you're feeling that day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Teachers, if you are listening, we just gave you an idea.
Yeah, do that.
Sadie, thank you so, so much for opening your heart today. And thank you for your work. Thank you for being brave enough to look inside of yourself and want more for yourself, and giving yourself a platform that other people can come and be loved on. And I hope that this is not the last that I see speaker or be in the same space as you. And so I will have all the links to how you can find her and her current offerings. And I know she has a few freebies if you're looking for those to kind of get started. So any final sort of words that you would send for encouragement to those that are listening?
Well, thank you for all of that. First of all, I think the main thing, and I come back to this myself because I also sometimes forget. So it's okay that you forget, because we do, but just to come back to that idea of meeting yourself with compassion for anything and everything that you stumble on along the way, because you will stumble, and then judging yourself for it does nothing but make things feel worse. So coming back to that compassion, just keep dolloping it on like cream on a cake. Just, there is no limit to how much compassion you can give yourself. So I think if everyone was more compassionate with themselves, then the world would be in a lot better state, I think.
Sadie, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into the show today. If you heard something that helped you, I would love it if you would leave a review and share it with your friends. This helps more people just like you become inspired to move the needle of their big CEO energy into a positive direction. If you would like to learn more about how I can help you streamline and position your business for growth, or lead your business as a CEO, feel free to jump into the show notes with all of the links to find me. And don't forget to head over to Instagram so we can be pals.